Hello and welcome to the Investor Guys podcast, or welcome back. Hopefully you're a regular. I am Kevin Mills, and this fine guy to my side is
Bill Barnett. Hi, Kev. How you doing, brother?
Doing great.
It was that a cast.
How about yourself, buddy?
Had a great weekend. How about you guys?
Had an awesome weekend. Weather was beautiful here.
Yeah.
A little bit, but it was absolutely beautiful. I had a great weekend.
Same here, nice and toasty. And so welcome everybody to Investor Guys podcast. Glad you guys are joining us. And so, Kev, today, are we doing part two of the fire damage, water damage?
Damaged properties. So if you missed part one already, go back and watch it. Quick update for those of you who did miss it. One of the great opportunities for real estate investors buying properties that have been water damaged, flood damaged, damaged by fire, just damage in general.
Yep.
We see a lot in Texas, but also in Florida and all along the Gulf Coast for that matter, properties that have damage from hurricanes and storms. When a storm or a hurricane comes in, and they'll red tag the building, and it doesn't mean that they have to tear that building down. A lot of people are afraid to buy a building with a red tag. If it has a red tag on it, check and find out why it was red tagged. You can have the inspector meet you out there. I remember right after Katrina, there were a lot of buildings that were red tags. They were actually red tagged by the Army Corps of Engineers. And basically what it meant was it wasn't safe to go back in. It wasn't safe for humans to be in there. But it wasn't a structural issue where the building had to come down. It definitely needed lots and lots and lots of work. I bought a lot of buildings that had red and yellow tags on them. But all you have to do is find out why that property was red tags. If it has to be demolished, don't buy it unless you want the vacant lot, okay? If you're looking at a property and it has a red tag on it, before you buy it, find out why it was red tagged and what the history is behind that red tag. So I said that I was gonna pull up some pictures, and I pulled up a handful of pictures. Hopefully we have time to get through them on a couple of different properties. And I'm gonna let you watch the time, because if I'm paying attention to these pictures, I probably won't pay attention to the time. So let me know when we need to take a break. This right here is the back side of a floor molding. A lot of people call them baseboards. And you can see that black on the back of this, that is mold. This is a property that had flood damage. You can see all the other, if you look at that wood, that piece of timber behind it, this is stuff that I'm taking pictures of this stuff in the dumpster. If you look at that timber behind it, you can see black all over that timber. That timber also has mold on it. This stuff either needs to be removed or it has to be sanded and treated before you can go on. If you look at this one, this is also another baseboard. You can actually see all that stringy looking stuff. That is mold that has just started to grow like crazy. Now, some of these pictures I'm going to show you are going to give you guys nightmares. This is what was behind some of the baseboards. This actually grew all the way into the concrete. This is a concrete subfloor, and it grew all the way into the concrete. And I tore away this particular piece of wall because it's also where the pipes were. And you can see how it's growing from the pipes. So this is actually one of the places where it was flooding and the water sat. That's it, a little bit closer. And a lot of people are used to seeing those little black dots for mold, but this is also mold. This is really, really bad mold. This is the kind of mold that will make you sick if you breathe it. You can see it all on the walls here. This is another corner of that same property. On the back side of the, this is a pipe. This is not where it was leaking. This is where they have done a previous repair, but you can see all of the mold next to it. This is actually a different property. Mold on the floor, mold behind the bathroom. This is one of the places that even if you don't have a flood, this is one of the places you will often find mold because it is just so wet. Your floors are wet when people get out of the shower, the bathtub overflows. People don't clean it up. They don't treat it like they're supposed to. You'll get this behind baseboards all the time in properties that have water damage. You can see on this wood here, on this 2x4, you can see the mold growing on there. We had to take all the drywall out. You can see the mold growing on the drywall on the other side. This has been previously repaired because you can actually see the mud squeezing through new drywall on the other side. Previously repaired here, they didn't do a good job. It was literally all this. I don't know if you can see my mouse or not, but all this is mold. You had to go and we had to take out all of this drywall, all of these 2x4s. They have to be sanded with a shop vac right there, and you have to capture all those spores. You have to enclose this entire property in plastic. You have to make sure you're wearing a respirator and everything else. Then once you got that all sanded off, we had talked about different products like Zinsser mold and Kills and everything else. You'll encapsulate it there. And I've got a couple of pictures in this series of pictures that I'm going to show you where you can see where other people have tried to use the Zinsser. You can see here mold just literally crawling up the wall. And this is where we redid a PEX. And you can actually see the PEX right there. That's those red pipes. So the red is for hot water and the blue is for cold water. And you can see what a mess it is. Now, if you look at that white, this is where somebody came in before and started treating it. This is before we actually ripped everything else out. That white is where they tried to spray Kills over top of the wood. That's not the right way you do it. It has to be entirely covered and encapsulated. They did this wrong. And you can see it again here. This is this same property that just had the Kills on it. This particular property is one I mentioned last week, Bill. This one was being used as a grow house, and they were growing marijuana, and the humidity levels were really, really high, and it literally got moisture and mold into everything. And the sad thing is the house was sold at auction because it was confiscated. An investor bought this house, knew it was like this, slapped paint over top of it, did that stupid little Kills thing like we just saw, and sold it to another investor, and she put tenants into it. And that was all before I got it. She had it for less than 2 years, and the place was exploding with mold. Her tenants were moving out, and she was freaking out. Yep. I mean, literally, there was mold everywhere. You can see where we've been tearing out the drywall on this property.
Okay. Let's hold right here. We are up on a hard break. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Investor Guys podcast, and we'll get into some more mold. See you in just a minute.
Yeah, more mold. Let's get into more mold. See you in a minute. With the Investor Guys podcast, and just before we left, I was giving you guys some family pictures. Actually,
we were knee deep in mold.
We were knee deep in mold.
Let's get back at it.
And yeah, let me get back to those pictures here. And hang on a second here. What we were talking about was a property that had been previously used as a grow house, and you can see just the extent of the damage. Now, all those little zigzag lines, that's where the previous investor who purchased it originally after it had been a grow house was trying to, I don't know what he was doing, but that is not how you encapsulate mold at all. We had mold on pretty much every single piece of wood in this property. This is the bottom of the floors. We literally had to pull out the hardwood floors on this property. Because they were beautiful oak hardwood floors underneath of the laminate floors that they had put in, we actually brought in a planer, and we just barely planed the tops and the bottoms and the sides off of each one of those planks of hardwood flooring, and we reused them. We had to buy a couple extra because we lost some space, but we reused it. If you look, this is that house, and you can see the extent that we had to go literally to take everything off. Every bit of drywall was removed from this house. It's just, that's when we, after we cleaned it up a little bit. This was the skylight. You can actually see mold growing in the skylight on this property. That's how bad this was. This thing was just coated in mold everywhere. Mold and cockroaches, by the way. That's what you're seeing right there.
Ooh, good combo.
Yes, good combo. One of the things that we did was we also tented this property for termites, because once everything was removed, we tented it for termites, which would have killed any of the cockroaches that were left. Probably not any cockroaches left because we pulled off all the drywall, all the floors. This house was just framed with an exterior on it. So it had the exterior stucco on it. It was literally, as you can see, just down to the frames. We even replaced the vapor barrier on the inside of the drywall. This was the backyard after a rain. Let me jump ahead to some other properties here. This is that same property, and it was a mess.
Okay, what we don't want people to miss on this is that there can be some incredible opportunities when you're looking at flood damage, fire damage, and you just have to know the process. And that's one of the things that we harp on all the time, not just about flood and fire, but also just rehab in general, is knowing the process. That's why you want to get involved with a guy like Kevin or I, so that we can teach you how to be able to go in, evaluate this, price this, timeline this, and make a bid that makes sense. Because look, it's just line item. When you get over the fear of it and understand it for what it is, it's just a budgetary item. If we've got it properly budgeted for, then no big deal. Then it's just, okay, off we go. And you
that particular property, the owner that I purchased it from basically got cashed out on her insurance. And the insurance went after the seller because the seller knew that there was mold and didn't disclose it and didn't remediate it like they were supposed to. So I got it from the insurance company for dirt cheap. A nice profit on it. Now this is a commercial property. That's actually my son Cameron. He's using a roto hammer to pull tiles off of the concrete. This one had a lot of damage also. It was mold damage, and it was from the floor up. So some of the stuff you'll see were in these pictures where we pulled all the drywall off. And well, this is back to that house here, sorry. And others you'll see, this is that same property. So once we pulled the drywall off on a lot of things, like off to the side, you can see to the left. This is actually the bathroom. And this is where the tile was. We were gonna put up new drywall and make it more modern. You can actually see the sewer vent pipe hanging out of the ceiling right there with a plastic bag on it. So we put furring strips up, and we didn't do the furring strips on the floor yet because we put in new flooring. So we put the furring strips up and then we brought them down to the floor so we could put new drywall in. Cameron and the rest of my guys chipped off all of the tile, and you can see that line where the color kind of changes. That's where the tile used to be. Now we had to break into the floor because we added, this is a commercial property. We added an additional bathroom, and because we were redoing it, we had to make it ADA compliant. So previously, literally, the women's bathroom and the men's bathroom were back to back on the same water wall. In fact, some of you gentlemen might notice that little cutout right there on the floor matches the bottom of a men's urinal. So you're looking at the men's side, but the picture is taken from the ladies' restroom side. So basically what we did was we converted the men's room and the ladies' room into just the men's room. And we did a second one that was going to be the ladies' room. This is my son, Cameron. pushing the concrete saw. This was not a post-tension slab. You can see the size of this building. This was a huge building. He's cutting into the floor so that we can run new sewer lines to the existing sewer line in this property. If you look carefully, see how the drywall is cut from the floor up? That is because of the flooding. And you can see it in the background also behind Cameron to the left. Same thing. This entire property, anything that had drywall on it, we had to cut it from the floor up to that level, and then we had to put new drywall in. All of the wood that you see was all sanded, all treated. Cameron actually worked on that crew as well. We had to have a licensed company do all of that because it was a commercial property, so we had to have a certificate. But you can see John, and John's the guy on the right. He's one of my plumbers, and that's my son Cameron in the red hat there.
Excellent. Hey, hang on one second here. We're up on a break. We'll get back to the hole in the floor as soon as we come back with more Investor Guys podcast with Kevin Mills and Bill Barnett. Hang around. We'll be right back.
And we are back for the Investor Guys podcast. Did you miss me? I missed you.
We were gone so long.
Yes.
And hey, glad you guys are hanging around. We're into segment 3 on this part 2 of doing fire damage, water damage,
right.
Property that has been in hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes, floods. You look at any kind of damaged property out there, and look, it doesn't have to be natural disaster. One of the great water damage properties that I've done was a property that just had a water line, and it was a small water line. In fact, earlier, Kevin had a picture of a bathroom wall. We were talking about mold in the bathroom, and it showed a little feeder line. And that's all that had happened in this particular house was the feeder line where it joins the bottom of the tank had gotten a little split in it and had gone undetected. It was an empty property. And for about 2 weeks, that little bitty feeder line had a small leak in it that created massive, major issues in that property. And when I saw it, had 18 inches of standing water in it in the middle of Texas in the summertime, which it smelled really good, as you might imagine.
Delicious.
So do we have any more pictures, Kev?
We do have more pictures. And the point that we're trying to make to you people is don't just pass on a property because it looks scary. Figure out the opportunity. And generally, everybody is afraid of these properties, which means that it's a greater opportunity. The amount of money that you're going to get these properties for is typically as little as 10% or less of what the actual value of the property is. So when you consider what you're putting into it and what you're getting out of it, and it's fun. It's an amazing experience to do, literally, to see these properties transform under either your own work or your own direction. It's something that you won't forget. It's something that you'll like and you will probably continue to do. But yeah, we have some more. Let's go ahead and get back to those here real quick. All right, so there's the hole where this is actually where the junction was for the existing sewer line. And you can see where it's coming off to the left. And we did all of this once we had already cut out all of the drywall so that we weren't messing it up. And these are other things that you can keep in mind as well. This particular property was an old property that was built in 1960. It had been sitting vacant for a while, not only because of the water damage and everything else, but because it only had one bathroom, and because it wasn't ADA compliant, and because it needed to be updated. And nobody felt like doing that. And this property sat for literally probably 10 or 15 years. Fortunately, they kept it all buttoned up and everything else. So we didn't have a whole lot of like damage from vandalism or anything. But these people are just paying a tax on a commercial property every single year, and they're not making any money at all. So this is Cameron, poor Cameron, and John there on the right. There's a footing under this wall, for those of you who are familiar with foundations. That footing goes down a good 24 inches, and we have to run a pipe through it. So Cameron and John are jackhammering and roto hammering and everything else through that footing. It took them about 3 days to cut enough of space under that footing to run a sewer line. You can see them at it still. You can see these are the pipes right here where we ran. This is after the sewer line has already been run. You can see that the dirt has been compacted. This is before we pour the concrete. Now you can see we upgraded this property. It's a concrete wall property. We actually added additional offices in, and because it was a new property, we had to do it to fire code. So we used these stainless steel studs. And we're back to the original picture. Now this particular property, the profit on it was $1.5 million. That's $1.5 million profit on this property after we did all the work. And I had to pay all my guys, including my son, to do the work. And we still took about 8 months to do everything that we did, start to finish. Still made $1.5 million. We had a buyer for the property 2 months into what we had started, just based upon the floor plans that we had put together. And it was actually a city office that they wanted to use it for. We actually had the city purchase it from us where we were. So,
Nice.
Don't be afraid. Just because a property looks ugly, don't be afraid to run the numbers on it and buy it.
That's why
investors know it's about the numbers. I don't care how great the property looks. If the numbers don't work, don't get it. I don't care how ugly it looks. If the numbers work, you're going to make money on it. All you have to know is which numbers you need to run and how to do that.
that's one of the reasons that people work with Kevin and I on consulting all the time is that, you know, the first time you do this, it can be very disconcerting. But if you've got somebody like us working with you that we've done it for years and done tons of these properties, then it's very different when you have somebody that's holding your hand and saying, hey, this is how you do it, and has a chance to look at the property with you, whether that's physically or with all of this mess online and all of the COVID, whether it's doing a Zoom, a Facebook Live, whatever it happens to be, FaceTiming, a lot of ways to do this and to make it work so that there's a great profit in there. So I think that's the thing that he and I are just really hammering home today. No fear. If you've got somebody to work with so that they are protecting you, this is what we do. We protect our clients from making missteps, stepping into a bad property, overpaying on the front end, all of those things. That's why you want to work with a consultant. That's what we do. Been doing it for years. So check us out on InvestorGuysPodcast.com. You can see all of the events we got coming up around the country and get involved with us. If you want to learn how to do these things and obviously subscribe, like, we appreciate that greatly. Tell your investor friends about this or people that might be interested in starting in real estate investing. Great place to be.
Yeah, and keep in mind, we see a major storm hurricane event like this every 5 to 7 years. There are still properties in Key West, Florida and Houston, Texas from the hurricane that they saw, 3 years ago? Was it 4 years ago? There are still properties available from that event right now, years later, and in good areas. Key West is an amazing area. The area of Sugar Land in Houston is a good area. It got hit hard. There are still properties available there. The longer they sit, obviously, the worse they are, but the more motivated the insurance company or the owner who has that property is going to be to get rid of that property. There are people who just specialize in this kind of thing. Right after Katrina, when I was in New Orleans, there were lots and lots and lots of real estate investors that is what they were looking for specifically. And I'll tell you, the scariest properties I ever saw anywhere, and you saw some scary pictures, scariest properties I ever saw was in Katrina, because those properties sat for over a month in Louisiana heat, and we would get in there and they would still have just any low point or anything that was contained, like a refrigerator or a bucket or a toilet or anything else, just the foulest, nastiest smelling. The contractors called it Katrina soup. It was vile. It would make you want to throw up the minute you just smelled that smell. But great opportunities.
Yep. And hey, we want you to take advantage of those opportunities. Join us each and every week. We're here twice a week with more Investor Guys podcast with Kevin Mills and Bill Barnett. And thanks for being here today. And Kevin, brother, great show. Excellent job.
Great to see you again, and I'll talk to you soon.